It is Locked On Jazz for the 16th of August. The offseason is over. How should we look at it? The first team in the Western Conference just got better? ? And the wonderful Ron Boone stops by for an off-season interview. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow!
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are live now on YouTube for you as well. We're coming your direction on YouTube. You can subscribe at Locked On Jazz. We went over 2,000 subscribers the other day. I greatly appreciate that. As well, we are still available to you for free and on all podcasting platforms. All right, here's the plan. The offseason's kind of upon us, so we're going to move to about 3 days a week, best I can, up until we open camp. So that's probably for about the next 5 or 6 weeks. We'll do that. We'll hopefully do interview series. Ron Boone this week. I'm thinking Tony Jones, Thurl Bailey coming up. Who else do you want to hear from? Please let me know. You can email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com. If you have other people you want to hear from, we might run around with our Locked On experts and kind of look at other teams of the Western Conference and all of that. I want to review our offseason because I really feel like the offseason is now, summer league's done. The free agency's done. The roster is set. We're done, and just kind of put a little bow on it. But one of the things that's been most interesting about this offseason is I don't think anybody in the Western Conference has gotten better until maybe the Eric Bledsoe trade. Eric Bledsoe's got a bad name for him because he had such a lack of success in the playoffs for Milwaukee, but he's still a really good player. And frankly, unless he has slowed down miserably at 31, which I'm not sure he has done, he played 71 games for New Orleans last year. He didn't get to play with the ball in his hands as much because Alonzo Ball and because of other pieces. And he has had knee problems at times. So it would seem as though, okay, maybe he's slowing down, but I don't see a lot of data that shows me that. And I don't see that's the case. I mean, we always check like rim shooting. So that's the one area where maybe something's wrong, because last year he went from 34% of his shots a year. Last 3 years, he's gone from 38% of his shots to 34% of his shots to last year, 16% of his shots at the rim. That's a pretty dramatic drop. Now, that also might be the difference between playing in Milwaukee's spread system and New Orleans with absolutely no spacing at all. My initial take on this, I'm going to give Bledsoe the benefit of the doubt. It was just a year ago in Milwaukee in a spread system in a wide open offense, and he was really fabulous. He shot 48% for the field. He scored 15 points a game. He goes to New Orleans last year where they had no floor spacing. Zion, Steven Adams, Bledsoe himself is not a floor spacer. Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart. Like, that's not a team that had much floor spacing at all. Brandon Ingram's a two-point shooter, and he gets bogged down, doesn't get to the rim. Now, there is a chance, certainly, that his knees have finally worn out, and that is a decrepit 31-year-old Eric Bledsoe that's heading to L.A. I doubt it. I think this is the first move where somebody in the Western Conference has actually gotten noticeably better. Obviously, I don't think Russell Westbrook to the Lakers does that. But the fact of the matter is, Bledsoe, to me, is a major upgrade on Patrick Beverley, and Rajon Rondo is a shadow of what he once was. And the Clippers have been trying to trade Patrick Beverley for the last 2 years. Like Lou Williams, Patrick Beverley were on the market for everyone to take at any point, and no one would do it. I'm not entirely sure why Memphis did this other than to get out of the little bit of Bledsoe's next guaranteed year. I don't see that they got much value here. Obviously, Bledsoe, maybe the feeling in the league is that Bledsoe's really slowed down. It's a great move by the Clippers. They get better and they save a ton of money. the Clippers are funky because we don't know when Kawhi is going to be back and the length of his how long he's out. But I see this as a upgrade from the Clippers. Eric Bledsoe is a better player than Patrick Beverley or Rajon Rondo. I know Beverley gets the highlights. I know Beverley gets the talk on TNT. I know Beverley gets all the antics for all this stuff. He's just actually not that good anymore. He's slowed down. He's not the defensive player he once was. Bledsoe's an upgrade over Patrick Beverley, and he's probably a locker room upgrade as well. So for the first time in the Western this year, in the Western Conference, somebody's gotten better other than just what we talked about last week. I think Phoenix gets the most improved of any team in the league next year because DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, and Devin Booker will all improve. All right, let's look before we get to Ron Boone, who will join us on the show today. Let's get to the Jazz offseason. And really, it's an interesting offseason to kind of wrap your head around. We went into this offseason with, I think, more of a potential for disaster than most Jazz fans had contemplated. There were two things that could have really taken place here that could have gone disastrously wrong. One is that they could have lost Mike Conley. And two is that while cutting salary, that you could have lost Joe Ingles, Bojan Bogdanovic, Royce O'Neal, or Jordan Clarkson. Neither of those two have taken place. To me, I mean, the unbelievable spending of Ryan and Ashley Smith and the Jazz and what they're willing to do right now, in the fact that they're willing to spend that much money and be able to still be this far over the tax, is the first thing that's remarkable this offseason as a fan. The second is I just didn't think re-signing Mike Conley was a guarantee. So you get Conley back. Had you lost Conley, you weren't going to be able to re-sign him. Two, you don't trade any of your other main pieces. And then three, you're able to make enough adjustments around the outside of this roster with the addition of Rudy Gay, with Hassan Whiteside for Derek Favors, that you were able to save some money. And I don't think the Hassan Whiteside for Derek Favors is a major step backwards. And I think over the course of the playoffs, Rudy Gay for George Niang is an upgrade. As I've said before, like, George was really, really, really good in that role of 14 minutes a night in the shooting 43% from three or whatever he finished at. So I'm not actually sure that that'll be an upgrade in the regular season. Over the versatility of the roster, the ability to do different things, ability to play in playoffs, certainly Rudy Gay and his experience will be a better playoff player than George looked to be for the Jazz. At least also amount of options. But in the regular season, I'm not certain on that. I think we have to be clear about it. Doesn't mean it's not a good move. I think we just have to be honest about how good George was last year and how perfectly he fit into the team and also what he meant for the club. But when you look at the Jazz offseason, I'm not going to like Pollyanna this that it went perfectly. What I think it's more of is that, like, you were driving the truck toward the cliff and there was a chance the brakes weren't going to work. And there was a chance you were going over the edge. And instead, like, we got a pretty good view. We got everything back. We're still in pretty good shape. And then, you know, the little stuff, like the way the Summer League went, Summer League was pretty perfect. Obviously, they won a lot of games. But also, like, Trent Forrest signs a two-way deal. That, to me, is an important deal. We just don't know that whether Jared Butler, how much he's going to be able to give. The draft night seemed to go well. The Jazz were able to get out from under spending the money on a number one pick, and they were able to go get Jared Butler in a pretty good pickup. For them, we'll see over time. Some people, you know, I was talking to Tony Jones at The Athletic the other day. He's wildly high on Butler. I'm not as, like, I read Andy Larson's breakdown on him the other day. He's wildly high on him, called him a lottery pick. I saw a really, really nice basketball player. I didn't see a lottery pick. I saw a guy who can play. I saw a 6'3" guy who, I mean, I love the fact that on one drive with his left, he went left and went off 1 foot and packed it. And another time when he went right, he went 2 feet and powered up. Like, those are some special ready skills that most guys don't have. But I didn't get myself, I wasn't as wowed as everyone else. I hope that he is absolutely terrific, or at least can play the role. But Trent Forrest played so well in Summer League that I think he has to give you the confidence that, you know, while that shot was not good last year, was okay in Summer League, it's not a big enough sample size, that he's actually ready to play 14, 15 minutes a night if necessary. And Doak's has got people asking. I got text messages from a bunch of people around the league of like, hey, do you think Doak can play? And, you know, I don't think people this time last year thought that he could. So I think Doak had a good league. So, I mean, when you just kind of look at this just in a capsule, we'll get in more detail over the rest of the week and kind of dig into each of these pieces. And we've done each of them individually. But as we kind of put the bow on the offseason, it's over here. It seems pretty solid, like, particularly considering what we could be sitting here. We could be sitting here without Mike Conley, without a rotation piece, without Derek Favors, without a lot of fill-ins, without changing the versatility. The goal coming in was to re-sign Mike Conley, deal a little bit with our luxury tax situation. And again, Whiteside could be better than Derek. We'll see. To give us some roster versatility. And then from a young guy standpoint, I think we saw those guys develop in the summer league as best we could. So to me, that feels pretty darn good. Today's show is brought to you by my friends over at Murdoch Chevy, located over in Woods Cross, also in Logan. If you're going to stop by either of those locations, you can get the VIP treatment at Murdoch Chevy the same way you get over at Murdoch Hyundai. Just email me first at DLock09. The Chevy truck and the Silverado truck are absolutely the best there are on the market. Absolutely fabulous. The Silverado it's cool, man. When we had it and I was driving it, it was absolutely fabulous to have just kind of a big, I've said it before, you feel like you're all powerful, and at the same time, it actually feels a little bit like you're driving with a lazy boy chair, because it is just that comfortable. Absolutely fabulous experience. The Colorado's the smaller, more nimble truck. You can run around the neighborhood in a little bit as well. And then the great SUV lineup with the legendary Tahoe and Suburban that you know so well in the top line of the Chevys, but now also the Traverse, the Blazer, the Trailblazer, all the way working it down to the great Equinox. Check it all out. Murdoch Hyundai, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. We have a new sponsor on the show. It's called Sweat Block. Pretty interesting product, a Utah product, doctor created, doctor recommended. It is for those of you who have either a excessive sweating issue or a presentation you have to give where or you're going to be out somewhere where it's super warm. I'm actually coming to you from a Dallas hotel room, and the humidity here, we could use a little Sweat Block right now. It's pretty amazing. It is stronger and more effective than most clinical antiperspirants. You simply apply it at night before bedtime and go to bed, and the next morning you wake up, wash, and go about your day without worrying about sweat. Guaranteed. I know this all sounds like it's too good to be true. It literally is that good. If you have an excessive sweating issue, or you have a kid who's going to high school and has a little bit, that's pretty embarrassing for teenage kids, you can grab it there. Major presentation. It comes on just like with one simple wipe, and you suddenly aren't sweating. Chase, the owner of the company, when he had to test it out to try to figure out, he literally went on a run and did one side and not the other and saw the impact. It is called Sweat Block. You can get it at sweatblock.com. And when you do that, you can use the promo code Locked On and get 20% off, or it's at Amazon or CVS. That's sweatblock.com, promo code Locked On, and see what Sweat Block can do for you to help you out of those embarrassing circumstances or help you with excessive sweating.
Am I clear?
And now joining us, the great Ron Boone, making a video appearance with his Take Notes shirt on, looking strong. I can't tell how much golf you've gotten in. How are you?
The way you can tell how much golf I got in, if you look at this sleeve I put on my left knee, then you can tell, because my left knee is pretty tan, other than the part where the sleeve is on my knee.
All right, so
I've been playing quite a bit, in other words, yeah.
And how are you playing?
I'm playing real well. You know that course we talk about so often about, getting healthy and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, like sometimes you play Glendale and sometimes you play Glen Wild. So
yeah, exactly. 74 yesterday at Glendale. So had a good day.
And if we got Big D Construction to take you to Glen Wild, how would you shoot there?
That's coming. I mean, once a year that I get a chance to go up there with Big D Construction and play Glen Wild.
All right. Well, we'll have to get you out. And
then sometimes you get a chance to play Park Meadows too. I mean, I have a friend there as well. So,
Right. Well, that just depends whether my daughter invites you or not.
That's exactly right.
All right. Let's go big picture just to start. We'll dig into all the details and everything else in the West. We always take some time on this when we talk to Ron about this. Like, what's been your has it been an emotion? The fans, I feel like, went through an emotional roller coaster this offseason. Did you feel that, or did you kind of get what was coming? What's your vibe on how you've been through this offseason?
Off-season has been interesting, I think. When the season's over, you're always looking and thinking about how to improve improve your team for the most part. What moves can be made, what players gave you the most from the previous season. I'm trying to be careful here because there was times during the course of the season where you knew that certain players were going to be moved. In order to improve the team, certain players had to be moved, and so you start looking at the season like that from that perspective. Then you start thinking about, okay, how to improve this basketball team. Obviously, as you and I discussed during the course of the season, the wing play, the fact that we do start two small guards. I mean, where was our we needed a guard with some size and maybe with some strength, that type of thing, and just trying to look and feel that without destroying a very good basketball team, how to improve it. You win the type of season, you have the best record in the NBA. Can you duplicate that again this year with the moves that the Jazz made? I mean, it's just tough. And then having to answer questions, I think, David, from some of your fans when you really don't know.
All right, so let's go back to the loss in LA when it all ended. We kind of left the building utterly stunned. There's two questions I think that have to be answered. So one is the collapse. Like the fact that they collapsed the way they did in that game with that massive run and the game swinging that dramatically. And then you couple that with the 3-1 loss to the Nuggets. Like, is there something in that group which had really been together for 2 years that wasn't tough enough or strong enough or lacks a mental something? Is there some like mental aspect having those two kind of crushing losses to who this group was as a personality?
I just start asking a question to yourself. Now, the Jazz didn't finish two series. Denver Nuggets, they didn't finish against the Clippers. The type of team that we have, do we have the personnel to finish a very close basketball game? Then you look at the fact that the Jazz guard line, especially against the Clippers, was injured. And just think about during the course of the year, the number of teams that the Jazz were able to catch with injuries that had problems, and not being completely healthy. As not being completely healthy toward the end of the year, I thought, especially going into the playoffs, really hurt. And the fact that they ended up losing that series, and you start thinking about how could they have won, or how could they have beaten this team? Did they collapse? Think that, without having two strong players in Conley and Donovan, collapse, I think, is kind of a strong word, I think, as far as ending that series is concerned.
So then the next evaluation point I think you had to make going in this offseason was, did they lose to the Clippers because it was a bad matchup, right? The problem with the Jazz all season long was if you took Rudy off the floor, we were just horrendous defensively, right? We talked about on the broadcast all the time, like, holy smokes, they've scored 7 of 9. They've scored 9 of 11. Like, it was just obvious. And then the Clippers found this way to, like, with Rudy on the floor, make him irrelevant defensively. That was the crusher, right? They spread him out and they made him irrelevant defensively. So now the question was that something unique to the Clippers, or is this something that could have the Lakers done this? Could have Phoenix done this? Could have Denver done this? Like, could other teams have done the same thing, or did we just happen to run in to the one team that actually was able to play the kind of our kryptonite?
From a coaching standpoint, I think every coach in the league probably could have done this. And you're talking about a 7-game series. Coaches are pretty smart. They're going to figure it out. They have analytics, and they have their coaching assistant coaches and everything. They get together. They're going to figure it out. Every team in the league could probably have figured out exactly what the Clippers figured out there, and made it awfully difficult for the Jazz to beat them. So what the Clippers did against the Jazz was something that probably every coach in the league could probably have done success.
Did other teams have the personnel to it? Because, like, I don't think Phoenix can do it, right? Because DeAndre Ayton's got to stay on the floor.
That's the big question. What would they have made? And they were just the Phoenix, because they had put like guys out there on the floor minus Chris Paul, or 5 guys out there on the floor minus Chris Paul.
Well, and I think, we just lost Ron. All right, we ran into some technical difficulties there with Ron and his video feed, so we're going to get Ron back on. We're just going to have him on as an audio feed. We'll still have it up on YouTube, and then actually I'll have fun and put little pictures of Ron up. And on Friday this week when we have Ron on, or Thursday or Friday, we'll actually run through memories with Ron of all these fun pictures that I have of him along the way. Today's show is brought to you as well by our friends over at Built Bar. Built Bar, with the greatest tasting protein bar on the market. Is it a candy bar? Is it a protein bar? It is awfully hard to tell. And they have got the coconut almond and the peanut butter brownie are back. Now, I'm staying away from both those because those have nuts in them, and I'm allergic to nuts. But you can go jump all over them. Plus, the regular flavors: coconut, strawberry, orange, double chocolate, mint brownie, salted caramel, raspberry, cookies and cream, and cherry barcia with incredible macros. That's right, the amazing numbers, the details on those Built Bars with the low carbs, high protein, low calories. It feels like it's too good to be true, and it is too good to be true because right now you get a free Built Bar travel cooler with every bar purchase. So, for the 130 calories, just 2.5 fat grams with 4 grams of sugar and 6 grams of fiber, while 17 grams of protein in a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar with 100% real chocolate and 100% delicious. Go right now. Go to Locked15 is your promo code. That's Locked15. You can order the mix bar with 9 different flavors coming with 2 of each, or build your own box, mix and match 3 flavors. It's at BuiltBar.com. Promo code Locked15 gets you 15% off. Today's show is also brought to you by Indeed. If you are out in the market trying to hire people, it gets hard, it's time consuming, it's difficult. Well, the answer to all of that is Indeed. Don't just hope for the perfect candidate. Indeed's hiring tools will help you cut through the noise to hire faster and smarter. In fact, Indeed's Instant Match provides a list of quality candidates whose resumes are on Indeed the moment you post a sponsored job. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked on. Indeed.com/locked on. $75 credit at Indeed.com/locked on. Indeed.com/locked on through September 30th. Indeed will help you with the hiring process and take care of all your needs. That is what Indeed will do for you. Check it out. Again, it's Indeed.com/locked on. All right, we had a video technical problem with Ron, but he's still with us. He's on the phone, and it will be great. All right, so Ron, we were talking about like the way the Clippers beat us, and the big question to me I'm trying to figure out is, was that just unique to the Clippers? Like, in the sense that they could do that? Like, could Phoenix have done that to us? Could have other, like, because DeAndre Ayton's on the floor. Phoenix can't really do that to us.
Well, I think any team, David, that's pretty athletic and can put some players with some length out there on the floor, that 6'5", something similar to what we saw Houston do, or and then we saw the Clippers do it there as well. Could probably do something like that. How effective they could be in the long term for a long period of time would be the big question. But coaches are smart nowadays, and they find ways to make things happen out there on the floor. Quinn Snyder, probably one of the best in the league, and at making those adjustments during the course of the basketball game or from game to game, especially in a 7-game series. I mean, you can make things happen like that.
So because I have left feeling, and maybe this is just self-justification so that I, don't get depressed, that a little bit of what happened to us was that we ran into the wrong team. That if we had run into different teams along the way, we might have been okay. Is that wishful thinking on my end?
I don't think it's yes, absolutely. And then think about what Reggie Jackson did against us, and what he had 27 points in that last basketball game, and they just didn't beat Jazz just didn't lose. They were beaten by the Clippers. I think that last score was he lost by about 12 or 13 points or something like that. But they were good enough and probably didn't realize how good or how effective they could be against the Jazz until they got into that third and fourth game of that series. And the adjustment they made, and then with the athleticism that they do have, made it awfully difficult for the Jazz to win.
I mean, the irony is that by Kawhi getting hurt, they were forced to play that way. They didn't, right? Isn't that the irony?
That is a great point. Great point. I mean, that often does that happen with teams when you have a certain way of playing, you have a certain minutes that guys play out there on the floor. We saw it with Rudy. What Rudy played, 3 stints during a basketball game for the Jazz. And then if Rudy wasn't there, in this case, Kawhi Leonard wasn't there, now you got to find different combinations and different ways to play the game. Okay, then they found something. And when they did that, then Reggie Jackson starts to step forward, and he starts to be more athletic, more offensive minded. And he had a great series against us. That's for sure. I mean, he put together some very good basketball games. And then to go along with the way they defended the Jazz, obviously made it a big difference.
The crazy one to me in that whole series was when the Clippers just had that ability to go 6'8", 220 with like every guy but one. So if it was Reggie Jackson was the one, or if Terrence Mann was the one, because they were 6'8", 220, they could always double with a 6'8", 220 guy. They just had another guy coming at you the whole time that were 6'8", 220. It's pretty impressive.
Well, that's very impressive, and that's what I meant by being able to put that type of size out there on the floor and be athletic enough to the point where they can switch all over the floor and keep you from getting to the basket. The Jazz like to force guys to Rudy defensively. And now that the Clippers, they took away the dribble drives of the Jazz and forced the Jazz to beat them a different way. It was just some smart coaching, I think, by Ty Lue for the most part. But I'm not so sure, David, that those first 2 ball games, we all thought, oh boy, this is going to be the Jazz are going to win this series, but it just didn't happen.
Heck, I thought the Jazz were winning the series in the middle of Game 6, right?
Yeah.
Or was it right? Game 6, we take the lead. You think you're going to have Game 7 coming back? I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, we get to call it Western Conference Finals. I think I might have jinxed it and said that to you during a timeout. Like, this is going to be amazing. We get to call it Western Conference Finals. This is going to be incredible. And then
that third quarter got us. I remember that it got outscored by 12 or 14, 15 points, something like that in that third quarter. And that was the end of it. I mean, just made it an easy ball game. I'm looking at my book here now, David, where they outscored us 32-18, as a matter of fact, in that third quarter. And the Jazz, then they played an even basketball game in the fourth. So after leading by 5 going into the third quarter, but it was the third quarter that did the Jazz in, and that's Game 6.
Yeah, no, it was disappointing. No questions asked there. And I think, and it's interesting on what that front office with Justin Zanuck at the helm had to decide, because do you take the best record in the NBA and the fact we weren't healthy and decide, you know what, we're going to take another shot at it? There's a theory kind of out there that so you got an 18% chance to win it. You just got to give it a bunch of different shots at it. You'll finally break through like Milwaukee did. Or the other was that there's just something fundamentally flawed with the group, that they can get run like that in that big a moment, and that we just, don't have something. But I don't think you can tear down and throw to the wind a team with 2 young stars and, had the best record in the NBA. And so you've got to find a way to still build around it, even though they have this kind of ugly singular experience that they've had.
That is something that I think every team will go through at the end of the season. I don't care. Milwaukee will go through something like this, David, at the starting next season as well. I mean, as you mentioned, whether they spent 3 years trying to get to this point where they can win a championship. The Jazz had to stay pat with certain players and try to build around how they want to play going forward.
let's look at our roster. And George Niang, as much as we loved him, he was more of a product, I think, of the system. A three-point shooter, a player that didn't shoot off the dribble, wasn't a great defensive player, but Quinn found a way to make him effective when he was in the basketball game. He was a very good three-point shooter, that's for sure. But is that the type of player that they wanted to have going forward and try to win a championship? And so obviously it wasn't. They needed to be more athletic, and we're seeing, just that. So staying pat with the certain players. I mean, you got your three stars and Conley and Donovan, Rudy Gobert, Bojan, and as effective as he is, I think he just didn't he's not getting enough credit or about, the type of season that he had and what he was able to do for the offense, how effective he is for the offense. We talk about Donovan and Conley and Rudy Gobert quite a bit, but I think Bojan should be mixed in there as well.
Interesting. All right, so we get to this off season, and you've got massive luxury tax issues. You've got this roster that was really, really good but injured. What was your feeling kind of going into this off season? Did you think they were going to be able to make significant changes? Did you think they were going to be able to find a way to try to get better? Or what was your feeling going into this offseason?
Like everyone else, I didn't think, David, I knew that there had to be a couple of changes made in order to going forward. And I was kind of surprised with, going the Rudy Gay direction, but then I understand it. And you got Donovan, you got Rudy Gobert that you can't afford for them to have the type of season where they're not winning any basketball games and they're struggling with seasons. They need to win and be effective now. And so I understand the moves that they made. And out of necessity, I thought all along that there was going to have to be some moves made in order to strengthen this basketball team. The West is unbelievably strong. And how much have they improved remains to be seen, but on paper, the West is really, 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 really strong. And so I think the Jazz had to keep pace. Even though they had the best record in the NBA last year, they had to keep pace with the other teams that were making moves.
If we back up before we dig into that, we'll do that. We'll dig into each individual move here on tomorrow's show of Locked On Jazz. If we back up to last year, why do you think they ended with the best record in the NBA? What would be the things that you put down and says this is why they had the best record in the NBA?
There's a couple of things. First of all, we're very talented, very good at home. Defensively, the Jazz forced teams to have a very good offensive game in order for teams to beat them. The next one that I have, David, is that, and be interesting, and I'm sure you're smart enough and well enough to find it, is how many teams did we catch that were shorthanded with their superstars? Like the teams caught us in the playoffs with Donovan being hurt and playing through, which, man, what an effort he put forward, being hurt. And then Conley being out there as well, just not being at full strength. We caught some teams during the course of the year at where they were not full strength, and we did what we had to do. I mean, the Jazz, they had to win. If they didn't win those games when teams were shorthanded, then what does that say about your basketball team?
Yeah,
I think those two things said it all right there.
It is really interesting. And it's hard to look back and try to figure that out, because there were so many injuries and we were so healthy. Phoenix was too, right? The teams that finished 1-2 in the West were completely based on health in that kind of funky season. And so it is, was there, and does that tarnish at all? As you evaluate where the team stands, should you evaluate it less favorably, or is that actually something you should give credit to the team for? I don't know where to fall on that.
I don't either. but the Jazz ended up winning 51 games last year, and 52 games, and that was the reason I was wondering, how many of those. I think they would have definitely been in the mix, and that includes the Phoenix Suns there as well. So I think it would have been a lot closer for a couple of other teams there as well to see who had the best record in the West or best record in the NBA if teams didn't have those injuries that they had.
The only one I would point out that, and maybe it all is all because of injuries, and I do think when I evaluate, we'll talk about it coming up here in a second. When I evaluate, this week, when I evaluate the standings, we were 5 games up on Denver and LA and everybody else. So that's probably the equivalent of 6, maybe 6.5 games in a real season. When it's only 72 games, you were not playing 15% of your schedule. So it's really the equivalent of being up 6 games. That's a lot. Like Phoenix and Utah were up by a lot.
You were breaking up. What? You say that again?
That was a lot. I think you heard me.
Yeah. That's quite a bit. But we'll find out how good this basketball team is. And I think what's interesting, David, is will Quinn be able to run his offense a little bit different, with Rudy Gay and Hassan Whiteside now on the basketball team? Would Rudy Gobert be playing 30 minutes a game or something like that rather than 35, 36? I mean, will Quinn have the luxury of being able to do that with Whiteside? This season, especially at the beginning of the year, is going to be interesting to see what approach they've worked on over the course of the year to try to get this done. Of course, of the summer, rather, to try to get this done.
Interesting stuff. He is Ron Boone. He'll be back with us tomorrow as we continue the summer interview series here on Locked On Jazz. Thanks very much for tuning in. Right now, tell your smart device to listen to the most recent episode of podcast Locked On Today. Have a good one. More with Ron coming your direction in our next episode.